really didn't want to bring another child into this world. I knew I couldn't take care of it.
Just like the white-winged dove sings a song, sounds like she's singing. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Just like the white-winged dove sings a song, sounds like she's singing. Ooh, baby, ooh, say ooh.
Driven by the increasing number of illegal abortions, the New York legislators' decision to legalize abortion in 1970 pioneered reproductive rights for women and laid the foundation for abortion laws to be legalized all over the country. For example, Roe v. Wade. Although Roe v. Wade was overturned, it still contributed to women being free from the controlling laws over their body. The legalization of abortion in 1970 was a monumental law that created a new frontier in politics and women's rights. But to better understand it, background information is essential. By 1910, abortion was restricted and illegal during any stage of pregnancy all throughout the country. The only exception was to save a human life. Noticing the abortion ban, white men took advantage of the situation and forced wealthy white women to have more children because of the increase of immigration. In the 1930s, deaths from illegal and unsafe abortions were at a high due to the fact that the Great Depression was occurring and women couldn't afford to support another child. This caused women to take it upon themselves to get an abortion by all means necessary. Back alley abortions, an illegal way to receive an abortion, usually unsafe, were on the rise. These abortions often resulted with medical problems or a death for the woman receiving it. However, since women were desperate, they were willing to take the risk. After all these abortions, many women faced severe medical problems like hemorrhaging and were forced to go to hospitals and face doctors who opposed abortions. Because of the fact that abortion was illegal, many doctors reported women who were already going through a rough time. "25 years later, in 1955, another notable act transpired in the field of women's rights and abortion. This act was the Calderon Abortion Conference, a first-of-its-kind conference regarding abortion. During this event, a group of mostly doctors sponsored by Planned Parenthood, an organization set on protecting women's right to abortion, discussed how abortion was a major social and medical concern as urgent as disease. They touched on the topic that there was a large lack of statistics regarding abortion and that the lack of knowledge about contraceptives increased the incidence of abortion. By the late 1960s, people nationwide took on the mission of reforming abortion laws in every state. Protests and marches were seen all around the country, which eventually led to the major event of the 1970 New York abortion law, the Case of Abramowicz V. Lefkowitz, which impacted people for years to come.
Fast forwarding to 1970, New York legalized abortion. The 1970 New York abortion law, or the Case of Abramowicz v. Lefkowitz, was signed off on April 10, 1970, by the state governor, Nelson Rockefeller. The law was only passed after persuasion and influence from wives of men in other high political positions, as well as protesters of all kinds. By 1910, abortion was only legal to save a woman's life, but now that the New York law was passed and had no residency requirement, New York became the abortion capital of the world. A small team of lawyers with Florence Kennedy and Nancy Stearns at the head set up an argument in January of 1970 that no one had dared to make before. That a woman's right to an abortion was rooted in the Constitution's promises of liberty and equal protection. Nancy had stated, "When we couldn't control when we had a baby, we weren't free and we weren't equal." Stearns and Kennedy wanted the court to understand that risking an illegal procedure or carrying a forced pregnancy could largely limit women's lives and opportunities in ways that men would not even think of or experience. Women crowded the 13th floor of the federal courtroom in Manhattan to support the lawyers by giving their own testimonies. One of the testimonies was of a 19-year-old student who had stated to have been blindly driven to an illegal abortion and because of complications had to see a gynecologist. The gynecologist threatened to send her to jail for getting an illegal abortion, even though her life had already taken a turn. Another woman said that when she became pregnant, she had to forcibly give birth, causing her to take a leave of absence from Queen's College and lose her scholarship in the process. Multiple days after the testimony, the New York State Assembly finally made the decision to legalize abortion until 24 weeks of pregnancy and to save a woman's life. Its effective date was set to July 1st, 1970. The feminists had won the right to legal abortion in New York. After the legalization of abortions, Planned Parenthood opened its first health center in Syracuse, New York, the first healthcare center to offer abortion services under legal terms. Now that abortion was legal, millions of safe abortions took place in New York for years to come.
During the first year of the legalization, 50,919 New York residents received abortions and 88,123 non-New York residents received abortions, making a total of about 139,042 certified abortions in the first year of New York legalization. New York now had the most liberal abortion law in the world. This massive amount of people receiving abortions led to a spike in the amount of visitors in New York as women came to New York from every one of the 50 states to receive the procedure. This influx of women to New York led to the social frontier created by the 1970 law. This social frontier was created as New York gained more recognition both as a medical and tourist destination. Additionally, families and couples gained a sense of relief now that the option of abortion was available. With abortion, families could plan if they wanted a child and if they had the financial means to support one. Dr. Richard A. Schwartz stated, "The legalization of abortion is the only feasible way that we can approach the traditional family planning goal of every child unwanted child in the foreseeable future." In 1971, dramatic declines in deaths associated with pregnancy reached an all-time low with a record of 2.9 deaths per 10,000 births, or a decrease of 37% since 1970. Because of this large decrease, it was concluded that the legalization of abortion in New York had a favorable impact on maternal health. On the political standpoint, Nancy Stern, as well as other teams of lawyers, worked together to strike down abortion laws all over the country. The 1970 law created a frontier politically by influencing new pro-abortion laws to be implemented all over the country, affecting millions of women in the United States and people around the world. One case influenced by the 1970 law ended up making history. This case was the case of Roe v. Wade, one of the long-term effects of the 1970 law. The Supreme Court ruling in Roe v. Wade set a precedent that made abortions legal all over the country, permitting women to be fully in control of their own bodies. Now that the New York law proved that pro-abortion laws could be passed, others who wanted a legal abortion decided that they could finally fight for a change in their states too, influencing other laws around the country and affecting the political frontier. Fast forwarding to present time, more than 500,000 abortion procedures are received in the U.S. today, which is a noticeable increase from in 1970. The 1970 New York abortion law also established future laws and many social standpoints long-term. This includes the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrance Act passed on May 26, 1994 due to violent incidents from pro-life protests in front of abortion clinics, as well as the Doe v. Bolton law of 1973 in which Mary Doe fought for legal abortion in Georgia. Additionally, after the 1970 law, abortion during the first 6 months of pregnancy was legal. However, as a result of congressional uneasiness during the first few years of the 1973 Supreme Court ruling, cutbacks on the federal funds for Medicaid abortions were made. This had a negative impact on women, especially for women who couldn't afford receiving the procedure, still affecting the political frontier but in a negative light. On the social frontier,
So I think one thing that it did was, especially because I was in college in 1973 to 77, and so it really took away a lot of the anxiety and fear that people had about getting into sexual relationships.
By the 1970 law influencing this change of mindset, its impact on the social frontier regarding women and relationships is shown, demonstrating how the 1970 law led to the future development of society.
Overall, the legalization of abortion in 1970 proved to have a primarily positive impact on the social and political frontier as it set a baseline for further abortion laws to be passed all over the country. It affected how people view the concept of abortion and how families and couples could live their lives. Without the 1970 New York abortion law, the development of women's rights to their body would be greatly restricted, especially in the world we live in today, and the social and political frontier regarding abortion wouldn't be as advanced and knowledgeable as many people view the topic today.